Welcome to Cooking with Benson. So we're going to review a pressure canner today. This is the Presto 23 quart pressure canner. It's compatible with convection, or it's compatible with flat top stoves, ranges, and things like that. And the reason being is it's got like an induction built into the bottom of it. I've tried water bathing on mine, and the pot I have for water bathing is actually just too big. It can't get hot enough, but I did try this out today. And it worked pretty well. So I'm going to show it to you. Everything comes in the box and then kind of talk to you about it. So this is it. So that's a little induction setup that it has, and that helps basically distribute the heat properly throughout the entire pot and helps keep the water and stuff warm. And the way it comes in the pot is you get the pot, the lid. It's what they call like a canning rack, or it can even be a steam rack. So basically it keeps stuff off the bottom of the pot, so you put a little water and stuff in there, and either steam vegetables or your jars that you can and stuff go on top of it to keep them from touching the bottom of the pot, so they don't shatter and stuff. So you got that. Then the lid, you get your little pressure gauge here, and then it comes with what they call a pressure weight valve, or pressure. Basically what this does is, this is the release valve, and sorry the lid's dirty, it was actually used today. It's about to get used again. Once you get, so you put in your 3 quarts of water. There's actually a mark in the bottom of the container that shows you where you should fill the water to if you're canning stuff. So you put your cans in there, get the lid on, and then you let it basically steam for 10 minutes to pushes all the excess air and stuff out. And then this guy sits right here on the release valve, or the steam release valve. And what it does is, if this thing gets above 15 pounds, this wobbles real bad. And what it is it's releasing pressure. And it's to kind of help ensure that this doesn't build too much pressure and basically explode, because these are pressure canners, so they're boiling water, you're locking in the steam, and they're building up pressure. So, you know, there's a chance, if it's not handled correctly, if you don't know what you're doing, you don't pay attention, these can be dangerous. But anyway, so the other thing it can do is it has this little rubber seal on it, and if it hits a certain pressure, that actually blows and then lets pressure out. And when it's building up steam, this guy goes up. So as long as this is up, it means that there's pressure in the pot. Now, a lot of people, the concern they have with the Presto versus I believe it's called the American version, is of course that the Presto has a rubber seal here, and this even has its own rubber seal. So people are, you have to replace those they recommend every 3 years. Basically, you just want to keep an eye on it. If it gets crusty or hard or too soft or starts to crack in places, then you're gonna have it replaced. And of course, they recommend that you get this tested before every use. Like if you put it away for months at a time, or years at a time, they recommend you test this. And there's a special, usually most states have a local place you can go to have it tested, or you can even mail it back to Presto and they'll test it just to be sure. And of course, they recommend you order any of your replacement parts directly from Presto. So the idea of canning, basically what you're doing is, low acid foods have to be pressure canned. High acid foods, tomatoes, some fruits, can be water baths. So basically you put them in a jar, you put them in here, fill it about an inch or two, I think it's 2 inches of water above the lid of the jar, and you basically just let it boil away for like 45 minutes. There's special guidelines for each thing. Whereas pressure canning, what you're doing is acid kills bacteria. Low acid foods, meats, veggies, beans, they don't produce enough acid to kill the bacteria that's harmful for you. And some of the bacteria can actually form from food that spoils. It's like botulism, and it's very deadly. So what the pressure canner does is, in order to kill botulism, you have to get the temperature up above, I think it's like 230, maybe 240. And what a pressure canner can do is, when it builds pressure, it actually cooks up to 250 degrees, I believe is what I read. And so basically you put 3 quarts of water in the bottom, you put your rack, stack your jars. If you're using it's my homemade peanut butter, if you're using pint size, half pints, and then quarts are the big ones. So this guy, for this size, for the pints, it'll hold 20. For quarts, it holds 7. And the reason you can hold 20 is this guy, you can actually double stack these. So I bought a second one of those racks, which you don't have to. They tell you can actually put this, so like where 2 jars here, you can put another jar here. So you don't actually need the second rack, but I bought it just as a extra safety precaution slash my comfort, being especially that it's my first time doing it. And so I did do it today. I did not record it because, I'm not gonna lie, it stressed me out a little bit because of this whole fact that this is basically a bomb if you're not careful, you know, because they can literally just explode if you don't pay attention. So I was like, okay, I'm stressing out, and then I was worried that maybe I wasn't gonna hit the right pressure and stuff, because I tried water bathing with the big pot I have in my stove won't do it. However, this worked perfectly fine on my glass top surface, and my glass top surface, you know, I know the weight and stuff. I checked the manufacturer and it says it's okay to do this type of stuff. But it was stressful, so I didn't record it. I am going to do some sweet potatoes probably either later tonight or tomorrow, and I will bring you along for that entire process to show you how I did mine. But hang on. What I did today though was mushrooms. Pretty straightforward and simple. You soak the mushrooms in water to get the dirt for 10 minutes, then you boil them for 5 minutes, and then you basically jar them. So this is 1 jar, and these have probably been done going on 8 hours now. They actually, how you know they seal is the indentation here. When you press down, it doesn't, you don't hear that pop that you would normally hear. It's like if you open like a salsa jar or something, there's always that pop. When it pushes down, it seals. So the other way to test it is these rings, you actually don't have to store them with the rings on them because this seals so well, this little flat piece in here. But you're not supposed to test it for 24 hours, and what you can literally do is grab just the edge of this and hold it, and the seal, you can literally just swing the jar and that seal will hold. It's something you have to pop forcefully like a butter knife or something. So I did cut up mushrooms, and then I did some whole jar mushrooms. So with these, the headspace was 1 inch. I have a headspace tester, and I got the water to 1 inch, and I guess I lost some water during the cooking process. Now, this stuff, and when you're fermenting, you have to make sure everything's submerged under the salt water, the brine that you create. Otherwise, these things can go bad and mold. Well, during the canning process, because these get to such high temperatures, even when I pulled them out of the water, they were still boiling on the inside. And you hear them pop there, pop, 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 pop. You lose a little bit of, I lost a little bit of water, so maybe my headspace wasn't quite what I wanted it or should have been. But they did say that's fine. Everything I read from like the canning book and stuff said that's fine. These might get a little discolored on the top, but they'll be okay. And I mean, you won't really know until you pop the top, so I'll test the seals tomorrow, make sure the seals hold, and then you won't really know if anything else has gone wrong until later on. But from everything I'm seeing here, these guys look good. I didn't salt these or anything like that. You can if you want to, but I'll salt these whenever I use them in recipes. But we bought this big case of mushrooms, and I got them going. So now what I did with these guys, like I said, soaked them, boiled them for 5 minutes, then I put them in the jars, and then you're supposed to cover them with boiling water. I didn't use the water that I cooked them in because I was worried, A, there may have still been some remnants of dirt from after I soaked them, but B, I wanted fresh water on them, so I actually took a kettle and boiled water in a kettle, and then I filled them up to the 1 inch mark headspace with clean boiled water before I put them in the canner. So these guys went in the canner for 45 minutes at 11 pounds. Total time was about 65-70 minutes because you have to let them run for that 10 minutes where it pushes out, it exhausts the excess air that was in the canner when you first close it. I will say that these actually went for longer than that because here's the issue I had with a glass top stove. If you're on a fire, a gas stove, there's constant heat there, and so it's a lot easier on a gas stove to control high, medium, low than it is on a gas or on a glass top, because on a glass top, if you turn it to low, it turns the heat on, shuts the heat off, turns the heat on, shuts the heat off, and that's how it maintains that low, is it just tries to keep turning it on and off. And I found that trying to maintain the 11 pounds was a little bit more difficult. So what I did was I actually maintained about 12 pounds, between 11.5 to 12.5 pounds. because at one point I got 30 minutes into it and it dropped below 11 pounds. If you drop below your weight at any point while pressure canning, you have to start all over. You have to get it back to the proper weight and start all over. Otherwise, you run the risk of basically creating waste or botulism or some kind of bacteria in your food because it's not cooked properly, it doesn't seal properly. So literally 30 minutes into it, I had like 20 minutes left and I had to restart over. So I got it up to between 11 and a half. It basically swayed between 11 and a half and 12 and a half. And I let it go there for 45 minutes. And then once it's done, once it hits that maximum time frame, you're supposed to shut off the burner, pick the pot up and move it to off the burner that it's on, and then it has to depressurize itself naturally. You can't pull the weight off the valve or anything like that or anything like that. So you have to let it completely come down, and basically once this little like pop-up thing lowers, that's when you can take the lid off because there's no pressure. The whole process, like I said, aside from trying to maintain that 11 pounds on a glass top stove, and this thing says you can't use it on any flame higher than like 12,000 BTUs, which they say is like a turkey fryer because it'll actually cause the pot to warp or soften in certain spots. And the only outside burner I have right now is a turkey fryer, which is what I canned, I water bathed my tomatoes and stuff with. So whole process though was very easy. It's a lot of work and you have to be very well coordinated because you got to wash your jars and you got to leave warm water in your jars so the jars are warm until you're ready to use them, and you have to cook all the food, and because this stuff has to be hot packed. So like you've got a pot of mushrooms going. Once they hit that 5-minute boil, you're canning them, cover them in boiling water, and then you got to move this to your burner or put it on whatever burner that it's on, add the 3 quarts of water, immediately get your cans in there as they're packed so that they're still in that warm water, because when you put your 3 quarts of water in here, it has to be 180 degrees. You can't just put cold water in there. The water that goes in the 3 quarts has to be 180 degrees. So you got to make sure you've got that maintained. And then of course you have to put these things in warm water so it helps soften the edge of where it seals. So it's very hectic. There's a lot of work to it. Maybe I'll capture that when I do the sweet potatoes. So it's very interesting, and it tells you like all the different steps. You got to make sure. You got to make sure that this little steam chimney is clean. You can look through it and see if it's blocked at any kind. Then you have to make sure it's clean. The only reason I see that getting blocked is A, if you make food in it and it spews the food up, that'll block it. Or B, if you have like hard water, kind of like we do here in Florida, you might get some buildup of like minerals and stuff. But I don't plan on actually cooking food in this thing. It's literally only going to be to can vegetables and meat and stuff like that. So, like I said, I'll bring you back tomorrow or later tonight whenever I decide to do it. When we do sweet potatoes, those guys actually got the process for like 90 minutes, I think. I have to double check the recipe. There's very specific guidelines to canning vegetables, canning meats, everything's like I didn't have enough to do a full 20 jars of mushrooms, so I tried to find if there's anything else I had that matched mushrooms. And nothing matches mushrooms at the exact weight and time frame. So I think I did like 13 or 14 jars of mushrooms. So all in all, first experience, very hectic, a lot of work, but worth it in the end when I can preserve stuff. Or if I find like vegetables on sale, like I find green beans or sweet potatoes on sale, I can grab up as many as I need to, come home, can them, and I have green beans for months to a year. So I've got some stuff in the freezer that I'm going to pull out that we froze that were vegetables, like green beans and asparagus and stuff. I'm going to let it defrost and then follow the guidelines to actually can those. Sweet potatoes, I've got pickles that are ready to go, which I think I can water bath pickles because we're going to vinegar. You're going to have vinegar on them, so that has plenty of acid. You don't have to worry about that. But all in all, I really enjoy this. I know people prefer the American, but it was like $300 for one of those. This guy was $100. And yeah, maybe every couple years I have to replace the still and some gaskets and stuff, and I'm okay with that. Maybe if I really get into this, my next one will be an American versus the Presto. But at that point, I'll have a better stove that I can do like 2 or 3 canners at one time if I need to. But anyways, I just want to give you guys a little heads up, talk to you about the Presto canning, my first experience with it, and I'm excited. Like I said, even though it was stressful and hectic, I enjoyed the final product simply because this is something that a lot of people go into scared of, like jarring and canning stuff, because if you don't do it right, you run the risk of killing whoever eats this because of botulism and stuff. So I'm very excited. And they give you all the signs and stuff and the warnings in the book, like how to know if it's bad, or the things to check for before you eat it. Like you don't, in 8 months you're gonna crack this open and just start eating it. You're gonna double check just to be safe. But anyways, that's it. I'm babbling now at this point because it's been such an interesting process, and I'm trying to make sure I didn't forget anything. But we'll talk more when I do the potatoes, the sweet potatoes and stuff. So those are going to be done in quart jars, the big jars, versus the pints. So we'll only do 7 of those at a time. But anyways, hope you guys enjoy this one. Let me know if you have a Presto canner, if you've got any tips or tricks that I should try out. If you have the Presto and you've been doing it for years and years and years, let me know. I'm part of like 3 or 4 Facebook groups. I'm silently stalking them and reading everybody's posts and stuff to make sure I knew what I was doing going into it. I read the user manual like 5 times. So anyways, hope you guys enjoy this one. Let me know what you do with your canner, and I'll see you in the kitchen.